Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to New Earth podcast. I'm absolutely delighted to have with me today Tim Wild. Welcome, Tim.
Hiya, Sarah. Thank you for inviting me on.
Well, it was just wonderful to meet you in Portugal on the 22nd of October. What a powerful event that was. I'm sure you've got lots to say about that.
Yeah. I mean, it's the I was talking about kind of the actual date on the 22nd. I mean, it there's been so much going on this year. The 22nd was kind of, it's almost like the wild card or the joker in the pack, because if you think about all of the other dates that we usually expect very high frequency energies on, they're associated with the equinoxes, the solstices, the Lion's Gate, all of these new, and you kind of like, you're pre-prepared for it a little bit. But this one was just that, it was like a designated, I think the words that were given to me, designated light package on a date that we all suddenly realized that we've been preparing for all year. And wow, it was off the charts.
And you use the word designated light package, and literally that was your experience, that downloading, anchoring, very powerful. I think it was 11th dimensional light, wasn't it, that you were working
It was with? I mean, I've in the promo, in the videos and the wording that Diana Cooper sent out, we all said a little bit in advance kind of thing, and I mentioned that the Intergalactic Council had kind of been fine-tuning me all year, but I realized when I looked deeper into the energies and how far back this actually goes, and it's almost like my self-training light capacity mission. You say that when you've had a few beers. That all began kind of in about 2003, 2004. So I've been really kind of pushing my boundaries to what I can hold and what I can anchor for a long period of time. And even with all of that preparation, it still took me into a total state where I had to repair afterwards. If you listen to the videos and everything, the actual the current of the Helios light as it passed through me rearranged everything within my kind of like divine lines and the meridians, and highlighted a very like a big spot in my sacral chakra that needed rectifying. My hips swelled up and I had to go straight away to the chiropractor. And when I walked through the door, he took one look at me and like, what have you done? I mean, he's used to me turning up with kickboxing injuries. And usually when you've got a symptom like that, a physical visible symptom on the body, you can associate it with a spine injury. So he said, you look like you've traumatized one of your discs or herniated, because that's what it usually looks like. So I kind of lay down and got the poking and the prodding and the moving around, and I had full mobility in my hip. So it's like, that's not a spine injury, that's something else. And this particular chap that I go and see, Lawrence, it's at Karma Life in Wimborne. He's a sorcerer, not a chiropractor. So amazing with all his energy work. Energy, he can test whether it's physical, emotional, or cosmic. And there was no physical or emotional. It was all the muscle tests came back as cosmic. So that was suddenly realized what had actually happened.
And obviously you were anchoring that light through you, but we were all doing that to a lesser degree, so I think a lot of people, I set up a Facebook group raising the frequency of the world, and it's for people that were hooked in with this event or are interested in raising the frequency, and loads of people have been experiencing similar symptoms, physical unwellness. I myself felt, for me, it wasn't so physical, it was more emotional. I felt really raw afterwards, and I'm still feeling that a little bit. I think it's affected my nervous system. That's the impact it's had on me. So I wondered if you could talk about that, and I'd also be really interested to hear, what the training was that you feel you've been through to prepare to hold this high frequency light. because presumably, you know, you're human, you have weak spots, you know, and that this
Yeah.
was what was highlighted, you know, with this
Yeah.
sacral experience.
It's it was interesting, the wording prior to the event, because Diana used very specific wording for each of us, saying we are the only people on the planet who are able to anchor that frequency. And at the time, it's sort of like I felt a little bit taken aback by that. And also there were people out there who messaged me and said, of course you're not the only person that can anchor a Helios frequency. And I still don't think I am now, but what she actually meant from that information was given to her, that I was the only person who was able to cope with the immediate after effects of the anchoring. And what made it doable was the fact that everybody, like yourself and your beautiful group, got involved. So this was a full-blown team effort. And this is the first time that I've really seen something that's made my heart smile so much, is so many people all focused and dedicated on one operation. Now, if we can do that regularly and focus on things that we need to be focusing on, like changing the alchemy of situations around the world, we can achieve what we're setting out to achieve incredibly quickly. It just seemed to me to be a sign of things to come, and it was beautiful.
It's really, really interesting. And, you know, the heart energy at the event, and certainly holding this group energy, it's been so beautiful. I felt a little bit tearful actually when you were saying how it's moved like this, because people have been sharing their stories, you know, sharing their crystal grids, sharing the orbs and lights, you know, light beings in their photographs, sharing their stories. You know, there was a beautiful story about one boy that was being bullied, a teenager, and he watched this and he felt more authority in himself, and without saying or doing anything, the dynamics changed, you know, and these are the kind of shifts that are happening within people. So it's just
amazing.
really, really beautiful. So thank you so much for everybody that's been involved, and also for yourself for holding space for such beauty, really.
Well, thank you.
It's interesting though, because, you know, when you mentioned in terms of people contacting you saying you're not the only person that could hold this, I had a lot of that prior to the event because I was promoting it, and I had a lot of this, and it seemed to kind of raise to the surface this kind of energy as well. And my feeling was that was what was being cleared as well.
Absolutely. It's ultimately that particular package of I mean, there were 4 of us, and thousands and thousands of people assisting with the crystal grids. But when I received that particular template, the Helios template, it's very specific. So I mean, I think we can all agree that the masculine template on this planet has been pretty corrupted for quite a long period of time. In fact, we spent 10,000 years in 3D from the fall of Atlantis, and the whole learning plane of planet Earth in the 3rd dimension has been ruled by masculine dominated ego. It's been like the polar opposite of what it should be. There's been no balance. It's all been going in one direction. So to rectify that is quite a big thing. And I've always noted, and many others have noted, during live classes and workshops, say you've got 100 people. 5 years ago, there would only be 5 blokes in the audience, and the chances are they've been dragged along by the missus, and they're sat there like this. And by the end of the day, they're soaking it all up like everybody else. But what I'm seeing now is a huge rise in divine masculine souls stepping forwards. It hasn't been a safe space for us to do so really until now, because there's been so much unbalanced energy, so much trauma, so many things that need to be rectified. And the Helios gold print that came through is it's a clear start. It's a restart and you've just really got my attention with what you said about that young man who saw it and stepped into his authority. Amazing. This is what the package contains. Yay. It contains the energies of the divine masculine warrior. And in order for all of the men on this planet to step into their higher roles, it has to be done within that heart-centered frequency. It can't have the ego template that it existed on before, because all that's got to go as we move into these higher frequencies. There's so much that we're doing in such a short space of time. It becomes quite mind-boggling when you think of all of the moving parts that are happening in this 20-year window.
It's quite incredible, and
yeah.
thank you for mentioning that, because that was something that I tuned into to bring up this bullying incident, but I hadn't made the connection. But this masculine feminine balancing, you know, this is New Words podcast, and for me it's going to be about bringing that divine masculine and divine feminine into balance. But at the moment it's about, firstly, the rise of the divine feminine, because that's been suppressed, and the balancing of the masculine, but within the women as well, because, you know, that warrior energy, we need that as well.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm a international ambassador for People's Health Alliance, and you know, it is about that speaking up, that stepping into our authority, which we haven't really had the role models. We've always handed it over. You know, we've looked at authority outside of ourselves, and it's that reclaiming. So thank you. You know, that is so important. You know, that's what was mirrored in that beautiful young man.
That I'm really happy that you told me about that, because that's, whenever you do something, whenever we engage in spiritual work, it is always, I mean, we should trust what we do, but it is still nice to hear that the universe is giving you, like, well, you want some verification, here's the perfect example, and you've just done that this morning, so thank you. It's our sovereignty, our authority has been handed over to those that have no good intentions for this planet for a long period of time, and we're now reclaiming that. Every single person that kind of unplugs from the matrix, I saw it back in 2020 becoming sad and deflated, like one of those helium balloons at a party. There's always one balloon that goes down, and it looks like a raisin by the end of the party, kind of thing. Well, that's kind of what the matrix is looking like as each of us unplug, remove our energy, step into our authority and our sovereignty. But for divine feminine in particular, it's been a massive journey to reclaim that authority and that power, because if you think about where we've been for 10,000 years, being a woman and opening your mouth got you into a lot of trouble. And so all of a sudden, to work through that fear and to reclaim that sovereignty, it's I can see so many people jumping on that ship with great enthusiasm. It's
really
fantastic.
Amazing. Yeah, I personally had to work through a lot of past life stuff to be able to kind of have a public profile, as it were, because there was a lot of fear around that. And I mean, that leads into something else that I'd like to touch upon. This idea of, you know, revisiting our past lives, our ancestry, to heal, but then, you know, bringing that back to the present, to bring in the gifts, you know, to not get stuck in all that kind of past life stuff. You know, it feels very important, this anchoring here now, and that's something that I really felt in the event. You know, it was very much, you know, there was an Atlantean connection, which perhaps you'd like to talk about as well, but it felt very present. You know, it wasn't about sort of reminiscing in any kind of a way,
wallowing in the Akash. What we're doing here and now is incredibly important. It's very specific. I mean, I've since Portugal, I've done 2 more presentations, a beautiful weekend in Hamburg, which was all about Atlantis, and another one just on the Sunday in Emsworth. That's my last in-person presentation of the year. So it's been all about the Atlantean energies and the connection. So when I'm working with those energies and people are kind of identifying, or they're remembering, or they're connecting to their Atlantean selves or their lifetimes, one of the things I've always impressed is that not to get too sucked into that. Okay, because, you know, we could all be like wander around with one foot in Atlantis and one foot in the present day, but that doesn't serve our current trajectory. We've got to be present. We've got to be here and now. What I tend to think is the best thing to do is to reach in, grab what we need, that sometimes comes with memories and feelings and a whole bag of activations, and come and bring it back to the present moment, because we're not that ascended master, and we're not that person or this person. Now we're us. You know, I'm Tim Wilde, and I live here in the present day, kind of thing, and that's the way it is. And some people are saying, well, I've got no recollection of my Atlantean life, I've got no connection to it at all. And I feel that we get given what we need on a need to know basis by our higher selves. So you're not going to get given something which is just a total distraction. You know, it might be a nice memory, it take you back into the time and the place, and you're very comfy there, but there's nothing in it there for you that serves your pathway. You're going to get given what you need. So some people might not need that Atlantean reconnection. They might need their Lemurian roots, or they might need their starseed codings. And it's all very particular for the individual.
Yeah, I love what you're saying there, because it helps to counteract any ego, you know, because it's very interesting, you know, with all this stuff, because, you know, and I've brought this up in my podcast before, but I would like to hear your take on it.
Yeah.
You know, when we're tuning into this stuff, you know, my understanding is that when we go back to source, you know, anything that's unresolved in us goes back to that cosmic pool.
Yeah.
So therefore, you know, anything we're bringing through into this lifetime and remembering, potentially it's cosmic fragments. It might not even be our own life. It might be something that we've inherited, as it were, in this lifetime, in order to learn the lessons and our soul path. So if we over attach to it, you know, there's this potential to you know, to get ego around that. So I love what you're saying, you know, to bring the gifts in and you know, the resonance, but not necessarily the attachment.
It's very easy to get attached. I mean, the first information that I ever received about my current pathway was in 2008, and Archangel Michael turned up in my bedroom while I was meditating. And I've just been through a huge life change, and he presented me with the Blue Star Seal, and then proceeded to give me all of this information about how I was a high priest in Atlantis, and how I was going to have kind of a key role in the future ascension process. And all of this information was incredibly overwhelming at the time. I mean, I literally blew a fuse. A little bit later on, about 4 years down the road, it was time to get my boots on and go to work, basically. I got a visit from Serapis Bay, who said, right, all of that information that you received from Archangel Michael, it's now extremely relevant for what you're doing. Get out there, kind of thing. And that was my marching orders, basically. So I've investigated who I was and my past life roles, and just enough for me to know why I'm doing what I'm doing now, and to assist me with bringing through what I need to bring through. But it's not a hang up of mine in any way, shape, or form.
No, and you
it
can
serves
feel
a
that
purpose.
in your being. You can feel that in your being, that groundedness, and, you know, bringing through what needs to without getting attached. So thank you so much, because that's a really amazing example for everyone, because there is so much that we can draw through. You know, like I had a beautiful experience. It was a recent podcast, actually. Someone I was chatting with, Peter Smith, he helped me reconnect with home, something I've always struggled with, being earthed. I've done a lot of qigong to literally plug myself in, because otherwise
why did I sign that contract?
So anyway, the connection with home with me was serious, and it's really helped me. You know, it's really it's beautiful. You know, it's really, really beautiful. And you know, that was actually really necessary for me to know that and understand that connection. So I think there's really powerful journeys that we can make here.
Very much so. No, you've really touched on something quite important there. I mean, the home connection. Just recently, it's become very apparent that there's a lot of us down here who are all kind of waking up to our master potential. I mean, the original numbers that Archangel Michael gave me for people that walk through the Ascension gateway are 6 billion. So that's a number that activates and wakes up over the 20-year period between the cosmic moment and 2032. It does leave a shortfall of people that are probably going to decide to move on and continue to learn in 3D. God knows why. But, you know, at the end of the day, their soul hasn't experienced enough of that third dimensional goodness in order for them to want to actually ascend in this lifetime. But he made it quite plain to me at the time, or more recently, that that's not a closed door. Okay, so if people suddenly realize that, well, actually I might not want to continue to learn at 3D, and they will be offered the opportunity of a fast track ascension process just like we have. So that's a rolling ball thing. The more people that we wake up and we get on board at the moment, the more people move through. And it's now reached, we're well past the tipping point phase. We're seeing all of this kind of lighting up, and it's like a popcorn effect going on around the planet. And this is why we're watching in real time the kind of the literal meltdown panic of those, you know, the puppeteers of Earth moving, you know, everything they can into position to attempt to control the movement of this mass wake up. But they knew it was coming, so I don't know why they're bothering wasting their energy. So it's more of it's a numbers game, basically, Sarah. What we're doing at the moment is a numbers game of how many people can we wake up in this short period of time. If they're kind of soul contracted to maybe wake up a bit later, then so be it. And we all know somebody who kind of was joking about this on Saturday. We all know people, or at least one person that we wrote off during 2020 is they're never going to wake up. Oh my God, you know, they'll be asleep forever. Like, why do I waste my breath, etc., etc. You know, all of us are human. We've all had those judgments on others, especially during that period of time during 2020. But all of a sudden, I'm seeing these people wake up, and it's even caught me by surprise.
Well, it's been interesting. It was, for me, that was a very painful year, 2020, because I'd become like
pretty interesting.
some sort of born again, you know, sort of, you know, going from let everyone have their view, opinion, you know, just leaving everyone to kind of like, you know, and for me, that was really about my loved ones, you know, wanting to, you know, wake up my loved ones, and it was very painful. But there's been even some traction, you know, with my loved ones, you know, observing things. I won't go into details, but, you know, that's been very powerful and very reassuring in a way that kind of all is not wasted somehow.
Absolutely. One of the most interesting things, and this will be hopefully useful information for the people that are tuning in and listening, is that we are going to be surrounded, even our sleepiest of loved ones, by people who are beginning to wake up, but they might not ever necessarily identify with a spiritual pathway like you and I do. You're never going to get them to a unicorn workshop. They're never probably going to be particularly interested in crystals, but they're going to be functioning from an open heart, doing open-hearted things rather than functioning from the ego. That's the purpose of this shift from 3D to 5D. It's a movement of vibration and consciousness. But I'm really seeing all of these people functioning at a higher level, thinking differently, speaking differently, acting differently, treating themselves differently. But most of them are completely unaware that anything's occurred or changed. They've just made this transition naturally. That's from living in a higher frequency environment. It's a natural evolved bit, you know, it's the evolution of our space, that people will rise into this naturally, but they might not even notice that it's going on. It's
you know,
curious.
and also, you know, I didn't necessarily understand that back in 2020, but what I'm feeling now is, you know, that polarization that occurred, it actually was part of the process, in the same way, you know, prior to this October 22nd event, we had that kind of polarization going on. And actually, you know, the process that I personally went through was, you know, division with my immediate family. But then what came in was a much greater, deeper acceptance and love. And you know, because, you know, maybe some souls haven't chosen that path, and, you know, who am I to overwrite, their soul choice, you know. So that was a big learning for me. I was never someone to override, but out of love and protection, I kind of jumped into something that kind of wasn't me, but in that moment, but actually, you know, it was done out of love. But ultimately, it's helped me to hold a much deeper space for love and acceptance.
Absolutely. I think we were very torn during that particular year, because those of us that could see with clarity were just like, wow, how can we be the only ones that are actually witnessing this from a clear perspective, rather than buying the whole fear package and having it, you know, like delivered by courier sort of thing, you know, like hook, line and sinker. It was we all felt that almost survival-based urgency to wake people up, but it became very apparent very quickly that that was not how it was going to function. It had to go through an organic process or an inorganic process. And now what I'm seeing is the logic behind the reasoning that I mean, all of the events on this planet have been pre-orchestrated, and the only way to wake up billions of people was to put them through a process where they eventually see, regardless of what that trigger is on the other side of it. So what we saw and what we endured was highly necessary. Yeah. And still to this day, we're seeing all of these events going on around the world. The more effort that's made to keep humanity in a state of fear, the more people wake up. So in actual fact, it's the longer they do it for, the more beneficial it is to us, because we see so many people, suddenly the veil comes off the third eye and they do actually understand. And that's an amazing moment. That's something that we can all kind of have a little bit of you know, we can relish it when it occurs, can't we?
It really is fabulous. And I know that our intention, we had a very loose intention for this podcast today to talk about the current energies, and there's been just so much to chat about that. You know, it feels like now is a good moment to talk about that. You know, we've spoken about the fear that's happening in the world, certainly the acceleration that's happened, the acceleration of the acceleration. I think maybe I even heard you say the acceleration of the acceleration of the acceleration, you know, that's happened since the 22nd.
Absolutely.
Would you like to talk about what's happening currently?
I'd love to talk about it. I mean, it's a perfect segue into talking about what's happened to our nervous systems. We have been I'd say right from the beginning of this year, if not before that, our nervous systems have been in a state of like hyper anxiety. I think that's the only way to describe it. When we receive new high frequency energies from the cosmos, our nervous system is aware of it before we physically process it. If you think about what our brain is, it's a multi-dimensional supercomputer that is completely keyed and wired into everything that's coming in, be it light packages from Helios, or be it like actual photonic radiation from the sun, as we all know about all of these sun flares that have been coming through, and they're incredibly powerful. So our poor nervous systems are attempting to keep pace with the speed at which we are progressing. And there's an organic ascension process going on, but then there's also people like you and me that are actually forcing it to go through quicker and quicker, because that's what's necessary. So when we receive large high frequency quantities of light like we did on the 22nd, that comes down through our chakra system. It's absorbed physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and essentially we ground it in. When it passes through the body, it does a multitude of different things, but ultimately its job is to create space, high frequency space. Now, if there's density within that space, it gets booted out, and it gets booted out very quickly. So the symptoms that we are all feeling, and there's a lot of them since the 22nd, have all been because we've all taken in this light at high frequency and made a sudden jump. We haven't done a little gentle jump. We've done a very, very sudden jump and covered a lot of space with that jump, but like, you know, big distance. And in order for our bodies to recalibrate, we have to give ourselves time. We have to give ourselves self-love and nurturing. So all of our nervous systems, our physicals are all shouting for assistance, because we've been conditioned to live in 3D at the end of the day, and we are moving very quickly into this higher frequency, and losing all of our old habits, our old thought patterns, the way we speak, the way we act towards ourselves, the way we act towards others, is having to be mastered very quickly. So the physical is it's a little bit like the couched 5K runner attempting to keep up with a trained marathon runner. It's almost like what we're asking our bodies to do, and we are doing it. This is the amazing part about it. We achieved that shift on the 22nd. We've achieved lots of other incredible things over the course of this year. And that's not even beginning to mention what we did in the first decade of this shift since the cosmic moment. But this year has been pivotal. I've never seen anything like it. So our nervous systems are lit up like Christmas trees, and it is down to us as individuals to identify the things that we personally need at the moment, like more grounding, more time in nature, more loving thoughts, speech, and the ingredients for our body, what we take in, what we put into our body. And that's not just physical food, that's what we receive from media, from TV. Yes. You know, it's our spiritual diet. It's never been more important at the moment.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I love that you bring up the deprogramming, the conditioning, you know, because that's a huge process, and something that, you know, it can be hard to see because it becomes an aspect of who we think we are.
Yeah.
I'd love to talk about what you said here about the booting out of this high frequency, and, you know, particularly the base 3 chakras, you know, because that is the movement chakras from the 3D into the, you know, into the heart ultimately. You know, because that's where we hold all our trauma. And, you know, you've shared your experience with the sacral, and you know, I think that's what in our current time is being activated, you know, that security, the fear, destabilizing us so we feel ungrounded, and we're in our trauma state rather than in our hearts. So is that something you can expand upon?
Absolutely. I mean, we're all working with the Atlantean 12 chakra system now, and we have been since 2014. So what I've seen over and over again is that everybody loves the higher chakras, don't they? You know, the stellar gateway, the soul star, all of the transcendent chakras. It's not until you start getting to the physical that you have to do some work. Now, as you go down through the chakra system, I mean, I've identified kind of 5 chakras that I would regard as problem chakras on the ascension process. You've got the third eye, you've got the throat, you've got the altar major at the back of the neck, you've got the solar plexus, poor old solar plexus, and then you've got the sacral. Now, those are the ones that I see reoccurring issues with. So for those of us that really integrated and received that light on the 22nd, as if we haven't done the work, it's going to come up, because that's how much we received in such a very, very short space of time. I mean, it immediately highlighted to me there was a huge pocket of stored trauma in my sacral that I hadn't even looked at. It probably locked away, far away from me. And so that was my personal experience. That's it had to be done on the day, but for somebody else it might have been a solar plexus issue, or third eye, or meridians and nervous system, wherever the weak points are. It gets highlighted when we receive huge amounts of light like that. Does that make sense?
It's interesting. I just have to interrupt. Sorry to interrupt. Because the sacral chakra connection with the throat chakra, you know, and you're coughing as you say this, so you've had some. It was interesting that it manifested in the sacral and also at the same time in your throat. You know, because they're paired chakras, aren't they?
They most certainly are. I mean, I'm finding that all of the chakras are really intermingled with each other once we move into the higher frequencies. And the throat is linked with the heart, and the heart is linked with the sacral, and the sacral is linked with the throat, and also with the third eye, and it all becomes one And then you look a little bit further on down it, and I can remember reading years ago about the unified chakra column, like chakras that are no longer separate. They are just functioning as one perfect ascension machine, so to speak. So I've had issues with my throat for years. And again, this is Atlantean collar stuff. Same thing that Diana Cooper, mate, you might have heard Diana Cooper talking about it, is she told me a story years ago about one of her first talks back in the 90s, when nobody was talking about spiritual stuff, let alone getting up on stage and talking about unicorns. And her job was to go and talk to a large group of women at a women's institute. I couldn't think of a stonier group of people to talk to. And not only was she talking to them about spiritual stuff, she was broaching the subject of Atlantis, which, I mean, how brave is that to stand up and do that? And just before she went up and did this speech, she lost her voice. Literally was reduced to a squeak. So she had to squeak into the microphone all night talking to these people who were just giving no real feedback about the information that was coming through. And so we share a collective stored trauma in the throat, especially those of us that experienced the fall of Atlantis, because we were given a lovely collar to walk away from with if we survived the fall, which many of us did, some of us didn't. We had to leave having signed the contract to operate in a lower frequency. Of course, your throat and my throat and all of the other throats out there are the one physical chakra that people can feel and hear and receive. It's a physical embodiment of the energy. So if you're speaking from the heart via the throat, that contains incredible power. And so for years and years and years, we had this collar around our neck that was done. It was there to stifle our ability to use the throat in its highest format. And of course, we've also had many other things occurring in the kind of like the 3D dark ages where we got punished. And again, that would have all been stored within the throat. So lots to come out of that.
Wow, amazing. I know that we'd spoken about possibly doing an experiential piece to this podcast today. I don't know if it's feeling to you now that you'd still just like to talk, because there feels like there's so much to talk about, or
whatever you want me to...
about you talking about this throat connection. It felt really resonant and really, I don't know, it just brought me into it. Okay, ask now.
So how would you like to work with an expert?
It's entirely up to you, Tim. I'd really like to hand it over for you to just feel into what feels important for the group of listeners.
I think it'd be really nice to just have a little look at the throat chakra.
That's what I was feeling.
If you're listening in,
I'm losing my voice. Look,
are you?
I've gone all croaky.
It's amazing what comes up, isn't it? So as you're listening to this in real time, if you're listening to it a bit later on, just grab yourself a crystal. I don't know whether you can see that. It doesn't have to be big or fancy. It can be any crystal, and just begin to focus on your body. As Sarah and I were talking, you might well have kind of felt or experienced things that are coming up. Again, it might have been in the sacral, might have been in the solar plexus, might have been in the throat, might have been in the third eye, but we're going to look at the throat. So just take a few moments to move into your body. Make sure that you are fully present here. So physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, just check in with yourself. Make sure that you're not wandered off in different directions. Bring all of yourself back to you. And begin to breathe into your heart center. Take a deep breath in. Light up your heart center, and on the out breath, just feel your heart expanding. And just do this 3 times. Breathe in through your nose. Light up the heart. Breathe out. And on the third in breath and out breath, you will now be sat within your own beautiful iridescent bubble of heart light. Now, you might be receiving a message from your throat So as you are bathing within the iridescence of your heart center, just bring your attention to your shining, radiant blue throat chakra. And if any blockages or any, maybe you might be able to see old symbols or an old rope mark maybe around your throat chakra at this time, just bring the crystal to the front. Just bring it and hold it over your throat chakra. And as you do this, just ask your throat what it wants to release, what it wishes to be free from. And with your intention and your attention upon your throat, you'll begin to see or maybe feel the throat glowing very brightly. The royal blue turns to bright electric blue. And just be aware that you are being joined by Archangel Michael, who is standing directly behind you and just placing his hands gently upon your shoulders. So relax in his presence. Archangel Michael is a familiar and very, very friendly being of light, but also carries immense power, immense courage. And he oversees the development of the throat chakra and anything else that might be going on. So just at the moment, feel Michael's hands upon your shoulders. And then with his permission or your permission, begins to work upon the throat. You might feel a bit of movement, a bit of activity, just either on the front and the back. And if you have a crystal, Archangel Michael is allowing his beautiful royal blue light to flood through the crystal into the throat. Any old wounds or any old traumas or symbols or past life contracts or remnants or shadows of the Atlantean collar are being removed now. And gentle healing is taking place. All of this contained within the cocoon of your heart light. And for everyone tuning in this morning, Archangel Michael is offering you a handcrafted diamond-shaped golden symbol. And this is the symbol that was created for the Atlantean crystalline codes, and it's called KOS. And he's offering to light this up in the center of your throat for you now. So just feel any old trauma, any old stuck energy just being removed. And if you feel guided to do so, just say the word KOS, 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 either out loud or just in your head with gentle power and authority. And just feel your throat clearing completely. And Archangel Michael steps back now. And he's just reminding you that any further work that needs doing upon the throat chakra, he will join you in an instant. All you need to do is ask. So take another deep breath now into your heart center, just thanking Archangel Michael for his presence. Breathe in through your nose, out through your mouth. Just being aware of your heart bubble still surrounding you. You can stay in that for as long as you like. When you're ready, open your eyes. Might just take a few moments also to ground in by your Earth Star chakra. Just make sure you're all grounded in by the soles of your feet. And many of you will probably continue to feel the presence of Archangel Michael with you for some time. Just bring yourselves back to wherever you are in your room and open your eyes.
Thank you so much, Tim. Wow,
My
my voice is sounding different.
Yeah.
That felt very powerful.
You will notice an immediate shift in the resonance of your throat. I think I needed to do that this morning. You needed to do that. Everybody, you can never do too much of that clearing, especially, or even acknowledging what might be the blockage in there. And that kind of same application of crystal work can work for any chakra. It can work for the third eye, or the solar plexus, or the sacral, or any of the other chakras that might be presenting themselves to you at this time.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us. That felt
No,
really,
my
really
pleasure.
important.
Yeah, my pleasure. Very
Today.
happy to do that anytime. Thank you.
So is there anything else that you'd like to share today? Is there anything else that feels important to bring through?
We are now in the run-up to the December solstice. So again, we are preparing for more integration. We've got the 12/12 event, and then we've got the in the northern hemisphere, the winter solstice, and the south, the summer solstice. It's going to be powerful. Okay, just like every other event that's occurred during the course of this year, it's going to be powerful. But I do believe that we've done the bulk of our light integration for the year. What we're going to be doing is putting what we have received into coherent action. So it's once we've done our integrating, once we've done our, done what we need to do for ourselves, next year, the winter solstice next year is going to be about creating from a higher frequency. That's what I'm seeing very clearly.
Incredible stuff. And how can people connect with you? I know most people will know who you are, but I will be sharing this with the People's Health Alliance and other places that maybe people don't know who you are. So I'll share any links in the description of this video.
You. I had to think, I had to recall then what my webpage was. It's www.timwild.com. And that's my website. I'm available on Tim Wild Practical Ascension on Facebook and YouTube, and on Tim Wild Ascension on Instagram. So if you're struggling to find it, put my name into Google and
I'll pop it under the video so people will find you and
do
connect in with Tim, because he's been doing some incredible work. And Tim, I'd be most grateful if you could put the link to the podcast underneath the video as well, because
absolutely,
I'm interviewing some incredible people, and it's all about this ascension process, shifting into the new earth. So I'm sure a lot of your listeners would love to listen in as well. So
very much so. Thank you for doing this work, Sarah. It's incredibly important, and whenever we have these conversations, something pertinent comes up. So, this could be a catalyst. It could be a trigger for somebody listening in. Somebody who might not have even acknowledged their process will have heard you and I talking, and it could, one person waking up is another, has a rolling ball effect. It's such important work. So thank you for doing it.
Oh, and thank you for all that you do and all that you are, just holding and bringing in such high frequency energy that we're just also immensely grateful.
Oh, bless you.
Thank you
it's
so
been an
much.
Absolute pleasure.
Oh, it has been a pleasure. And thank you everyone for listening in. Do tune into some more New Earth podcasts. Bye for now, everyone.
See you soon. Lots of love.